Do you want to paint something for Valentine's Day but short on time? Then this video is for you. In this watercolor tutorial, I will show you how you can paint a strawberry heart in 3 simple steps. First, the ingredients. You will need some tape to tape down your project and prevent it from warping, an eraser to erase the lines that you might not need or just to lighten them up a little bit, and a pencil. Next is a gel pen or some white gouache. Of course, you will need some paints. For this painting, I'm using White Nights, and the paints that I will be using: Cadmium Lemon Medium, Ruby, Madder Lake, Green, and Payne's Grey. Then you will need some watercolor paper. This particular paper I've used is only very small, it's 4 by 6 inches, and you can use any size paper that you like. You will also need 2 jars with water. One jar will be used mostly to rinse off the dirty brush, and the other one will be used for clean water. 2 paint brushes, a size 3, and a very skinny one for details. Last but not least, you will need a rag or a paper towel to blot off some excess paint and water. Step number 1. Create a sketch. Make sure you use a very light pressure on the paper with your pencil, as you don't want to indent the paper and you don't want the lines to come up too bright when you put the paint over it. Because we will be mostly using darker paints, it's not as crucial in this instance, but keep that in mind if you're creating other paintings in the future. And here's a pro tip. If you do need to erase some lines, make sure that your eraser is clean, otherwise you'll make a mess on your paper. Step number 2, add color. This is going to be the longest step because you're basically adding all of your color in at this point. We're starting at the top left with yellow, and as I'm going, I'm making sure that my brush has got plenty of color and plenty of water in it, so that the paper remains wet for as long as possible. And as I'm painting, I'm also adding a bit of ruby red and letting it blend with the yellow right on the page. In the middle of the top of the strawberry, I'm leaving a bit of area without any paint, and then I'm going back with just some clean water to drag the paint into that area, and it will make it a lot lighter than the rest of the heart. Going back into the yellow area with a bit of red, just to add a bit more color so that it's not as yellow. And here is the fun part. You wet the area around the heart where you want the color to blend out to, and that's why we are using our second jar of water, because we want clean water at this point. And the trick here is to wet the area larger than what you want the paint to blend out into, because if you only wet a small area and the paint draws into that area, if the area is small, you will see a hard edge from where that wet area finishes. That's where paint will stop. But if you want it to look like the color actually fades out onto the paper, make sure you wet a larger area or the larger section, and the paint will just stop drawing out when the paint basically runs out. So on the left, I've made a smaller section with the water, and on the right, I'm going to make a much bigger area where I want the color to bleed out into. So that area will be used for our sentiment that you will see at the end of the video. But as you're doing this now, making sure that you allow plenty of room to write whatever you want to write in there, if you do want to write something, but you don't have to. To make leaves look a little bit more realistic, you can mix a few colors and add a variety of colors on your painting straight away on the paper. I've used a bit of yellow, a bit of green, and a tiny bit of Payne's Grey as well. So I've added a bit of yellow on some part of the leaf, then I would go into that same area and add a bit of green, but not covering yellow completely. And for the areas where I want to be in the shadow, I'd add a tiny bit of Payne's Grey, and I would just go backwards and forwards and kind of mix those colors together, but not blend all of them in, just to leave some of the colors out on their own so that there is a variety. And to add a little bit of shadow under the leaves, I've also mixed a little bit more of Meadow Lake and Payne's Grey, and I've just added it on there up the top. For an extra fun touch, you can add a few splatters. The trick with the splatters is mix up a bit of your paint, make sure there's lots of water. You load your paintbrush with water and then you gently tap it in over the area where you want the splatters to go. At this point, you need to let your painting dry completely and move on to step number 3, which is add details. This step is where your painting pretty much comes to life. Once you add the details, you can see the painting actually take shape, quite literally, and it just gives it more interest. So there are a few things we're going to do here. We need to add some of those strawberry seeds in with the darker color. So we just mix up Meadow Lake with Payne's Grey, make sure it's fairly dark, and go with a tiny little brush and add those seeds in. Then you need to let it dry again because we're going to paint over those seeds and we don't want them to be wet still at this point. I'm going to use a white gel pen. You can use gouache or acrylic paint if you don't have a gel pen. I just find gel pen a little bit easier for this type of a detail. And I'm just going through and adding those highlights to the seeds. Once again, it depends on your light source, where that's coming from, and it depends on the shape of the seed where it's located on a strawberry. I'm also adding a few lines of highlights to the strawberry itself, so where the light is hitting it, you've got a highlighted section. So I'm just going through and creating those lines. And then of course, if you also want to, you can add the sentiment at the bottom of the strawberry. I just wrote love on it. You can put a person's name or you can put something else on there. You can spell love in your language if you are from a different country, if you speak a different language. It's entirely up to you. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know if you've tried this yourself, and if you have any questions, leave a comment below. Otherwise, here are some other options of other tutorials on the screen, and I will see you there.